Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. We have 12 days to go to the NHL trade deadline, and nothing of major consequence has happened yet, but we expect it to happen soon. I mean, I don't know if soon means 2 days, 5 days, 8 days, who knows, but we'll be here and talk about it when it does happen. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
All right. So I want to bring up the WHA versus the NHL again, in the sense that, I saw big media outlets today saying, well, Alex Ovechkin's only 40 goals, whatever, behind Gordie Howe. And, these are the only guys ahead of him. And again, I still get mad that there's that 174 goals that Gordie Howe scored in WHA that the NHL refuses to count. So, of course, you get some people that will ask, well, how good was the WHA anyhow? I mean, Yager should count from the KHL. And it's like, no. WHA was so much better. So I got Joe Daly, who played for Winnipeg, to respond, because I knew Joe would respond. He was a goalie. I believe he won a championship there. And
played in the NHL with Detroit and Buffalo as well. Yeah.
So here's his first summation was, if you look at the final stats of the records, as far as the records of players goes, you'll see that the top players were either from the NHL or ended up having good careers in the NHL. So that's a start saying, okay, this is a pretty competitive league. And Kev, I'll let you chime in after, because I'm just reading what Joe Daly said about the WHA as compared to the NHL. This is just in light of, were these 174 goals easy for Gordie Howe? And then Joe also said, perhaps the fact that the NHL pretty much prevented every WHA team from keeping key players was a bit of an indicator that they thought the teams coming into the NHL would be competitive teams if they didn't limit the players they could keep. So, again, these were not easy goals for Gordie Howe. And the fact is, I kind of get mad when I see, the outlets say, well, he's only had 801 goals, but it's like he had 174 more goals. It really should count. I mean, Negro League Baseball stats have been merged now into major leagues, and WHA was a legit league.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I mean, the difference was, they only had a few, star players, but, it was still a highly competitive league. Probably, they were like second tier NHL teams would be,
right.
How I would see them. But, they got some stars, obviously, and some good young players started there. The Birmingham Bulls ended up with, 5 or 6 good players, and a lot of players, when it was done, found their way back to the NHL. So,
yeah, I mean,
there was some. I'd count them.
Yeah, I mean the Quebec, like Mark Tardif and and obviously I know it was a bone of contention, and I think it still is to this day. And maybe Kev, about it, the fact that Gretzky was never drafted. That Gretzky was on the Indianapolis Racers, and then he went to Edmonton. And when Edmonton came into the league, they just kept him. They just had as a and now there were other Quebec, Winnipeg, Hartford had players that came over from the WHA. So those
Messier played for Cincinnati for a short time, but
he was a Birmingham Bull, wasn't he?
No, Cincinnati Stingrays or something.
Yes, he was Cincinnati for sure.
Yeah, and Vive and Hartsburg and Pat.
Pat Hickey was a real good player. Went and played for Toronto. Went back to the NHL.
Yeah.
Paul Henderson.
Yeah, it would make a big difference too if Gordie was credited with those goals, and he's not the only one. I mean, Bobby Hall obviously has some.
Yeah. I just bring that up as an example, Kev, because he's the one that gets shown most often, and it's kind of like there's a whole generation of people that think, well, Gordie Howe just scored 800 goals that count. Basically that's what they're basically saying. These are the ones that count.
But Russ, I'll say this because you brought it up, and I don't agree that Negro League stats should have been merged with Major League stats, because the Negro League was sort of like the WHA in the sense that it wasn't as good a league as Major League Baseball. Now I think Major League Baseball was wrong to not integrate it in the teens or the 20s or later on, because I would have loved to have seen what Josh did.
They were integrated actually before 1900 and then became unintegrated, if that's a word, after that.
Right, but what I'm saying is, when we're talking about Gibson or Cool Papa Bell or any of these other players, I don't think you can say the home runs and the stolen bases that they hit in the Negro Leagues were equivalent to what Babe Ruth or Ty Cobb did in Major League Baseball. I mean,
Yeah, but the difference is this, Mike. If someone was injured, I could see, that's just an act of God. But these players were prevented.
Right.
They were like,
they were good enough to play, and they were prevented.
Yes,
I think that's the key. That is the key.
Which is also different than the WHA, which is a choice. The WHA was a choice that those players made.
It was a choice, but then, like Joe pointed out on Twitter, then the NHL did prevent a lot of things from happening. So why did they do that? Because the league was good. That's why.
Right. It was a competitor.
It was a competitor.
It was the AFL and the NFL.
Yeah.
I actually think rebel leagues are good for sports.
They are.
Because it creates opportunities that players wouldn't normally have, and where sometimes you can create your own stardom and then take that stardom. You look at the USFL and the players that started there and then moved to the NFL. Jim Kelly is a great example of that.
Well, just before we start the show, because it was a monstrous trade, but it wasn't in the NHL. What everybody thought of the Russell Wilson deal yesterday? I honestly thought Denver gave up way too much for a quarterback who has had injury question marks over the last couple of years and is not the quarterback that he was a few years ago. He was very mobile and could avoid the rush. He's not that guy anymore. So I think they way overpaid.
I mean, look, do I think they overpaid? Yes. And that's because of the way they feel about that position in the league and the way that position impacts games. Do I feel like Russell Wilson's not still like a top 7 quarterback? No, he's definitely in the top 7. So,
and again, I mean, this is a classic case of you got to look at the circumstances of the team.
Yeah.
In terms of, I don't think they overpaid based on their circumstances.
Okay, that's fair. I mean,
on their circumstances, they needed a guy that they could sell and plug into their offense, and he's the guy. I mean,
I will say this: if I were a Broncos fan, I would be highly disturbed that 2 different regimes could not develop a quarterback.
Yeah,
this is twice now that they have not been able to develop a quarterback and had to trade a ton of assets to get one, like an old Eli Manning who did win for him, and now Russell Wilson.
And apparently they quickly, once Green Bay signed Aaron Rodgers, they quickly pivoted and talked to Seattle, or were talking to them at the same time. So if they couldn't get Rodgers, they were going to go after Wilson.
You should mention that real quick. The Rodgers thing now was maybe one of the phoniest off-season bitch sessions that any athlete has ever done all time. Because in the end, the Packers just basically said, well, what do you want to make? And he told them, and they're like, fine, we'll pay you. And now all of a sudden he's back with the Packers. It seemed impossible based on what reporting was going on and what he was saying on that Cockamamie podcast 6 months ago that he would ever go back. And of course, now
I agree with you, Russ. I mean, I wouldn't phrase it as impossible, but I think everybody thought that divorce was going to be final between him and the Packers. And not only is he back with the Packers, but he's back with Woodley is his longtime girlfriend. So
it feels like such a game, doesn't it? It feels like such a game. I don't know. It doesn't really game.
But anyway, it was this is the kind of drama that is what sports is all about. And just as like I like rebel leagues to create this, I like when quarterbacks move around. There's obviously we don't have this kind of showmanship with defensive tackles or DBs. But boy, with a quarterback, it's fun, and it really shows kind of the importance of quarterbacks, not just in terms of on the field, but off the field. Like, they're the stars of the game. So I saw just picking up on this theme too. I watched with interest some of the complaints, not many, but a few complaints about Tiger Woods being given money as part of that pool. And the idea, of course, is, there's a rival league that is trying to attract top golfers. And in order to prevent that, they've created this pool of money, and they're given this money based on, essentially what your Q factor is, or your, it's your social media presence. And well, guess who got the big payoff right away? Was Tiger Woods. And Kevin Na complained, like, yeah, but he didn't play a real tournament. He played a tournament with his son. Yeah, but that tournament with his son captured everyone's,
He made a lot of money.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so it's he still is golf, even though he's not playing. Tiger Woods is important.
Absolutely.
So, let's talk hockey.
Here we go. Let's go. We got lots to get into today. It's a very rainy, dreary day here in the Northeast. Russ, did you see it snowing like crazy this morning?
We didn't get any snow.
No, you didn't get it. It was 72 degrees yesterday here, and I woke up today.
2 days ago. 2 days ago. Yeah.
2 days ago. Yeah. So yesterday it was so high. It was like in the high 50s.
It was 50s yesterday. Yeah.
Today, wake up, just blizzard-like conditions for about an hour. It was just nuts. I mean, just stupid. Anyway,
you got our weather from Sunday and Monday.
Oh my gosh, it was just those big ass snowflakes. Good, fun stuff. Anyway, here we go. All right. Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, March 9th, 2022.
It's Wednesday, and
it's Wednesday, March 9th, 2022.
And I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen. I always know the day of the week.
I'm Kevin Allen, and I didn't even notice that he made a mistake because
I've been doing so good, man.
We're just so used to it. So.
I've been doing so good. You're watching the Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world and to get your opinion on where the eyes on this puppet should go. I just have a real quick question for you guys. Okay, so we have a puppet we're making here, and I just had to get these eyes, right? So the funniest thing about a puppet is you can put wherever you put eyes on a puppet changes everything, right? So you can like go wide like this.
Mm-hmm.
You can go in like this.
No.
You can go high like this.
No.
You can go like that. I mean, it's like this. It's like you see how, isn't it? It's just, I don't know. I find it interesting to me. Like my son makes puppets here, and he's like, Dad, figure out where these eyes should go.
Puppetology. Got it.
I just find it interesting that, like, that I don't know. I find it interesting like what the eyes say in a person.
Good cockeyed like Jack Elam from Gun.
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, it's a Tasmanian devil is what it is. So it's like, so you got to remember that, like, it's like, it's crazy. It's crazy.
The Tasmanian devil was always moving so fast, I never really got a good look at it. So
yeah, well,
I think you
don't quite look like the Tasmanian devil we grew up with, Russ. But anyway,
right.
All right, so let's move on. Speaking of Tasmanian devils and moving fast and all that stuff, here's my transition. Austin Matthews. Now the fact of the matter is, right now, he's scoring at a 0.8 goals per game pace, which over the course of 82 games equals out to 65 goals exactly. Mm-hmm. But besides that, he is really just, I mean, the way yesterday, he plays this game again. Yeah, can we talk about last night's games all being crazy for a second?
I was at the game.
So you're at the game. I mean, he won that game for the Maple Leafs. Don't you think? I mean, it was clear like he won that game for the Leafs.
Right. And okay, at the game last night, the crowd started chanting MVP, and I think he's in, he'll be one of the three finalists.
Yeah.
Out, and he's having the best year of his career, and he has scored 40 goals 4 times in his career. And
he had a 60-goal scorer that didn't win MVP.
Probably when
Ovechkin didn't win MVP.
Mario didn't win MVP one of the years that he scored 60, or Brett Hull.
I'm sure it's happened. Yeah.
No, but you're talking about because
other people were scoring more than 60.
I've got something to say about all this.
Go ahead.
I read the story this morning. I didn't see the game, but I read the story about that. For the first time, the betting world has made Austin Matthews the favorite, and I don't object to people suggesting that he's got a great chance of winning this, but I object to the fact that Shesterkin is not even in the picture. Like, he has been so good. Like, Austin Matthews has been fantastic, and maybe he will. But I don't know how you can. The same thing. It's with Rookie of the Year, to hear people talk about it and then not even have Moritz Seider in the picture, when in my mind, he's the favorite.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what's interesting. Like, we vote, right? So we do have an impact, or you had an impact. I don't know if you vote anymore, but there is an impact that the gambling world doesn't have an impact because they don't get to vote. So, like, even though they're giving odds, it's really up to the voters on some of these, and so it could be a little different than what they're showing.
Yeah, but yes, that is true. But historically, the betting world gets it right in terms of, because it's millions and millions and millions of dollars, and it's you always talk about horse racing and pari-mutuel betting, right. But that's how odds are set too, is what people are betting on, and generally, as a general rule, they're not going to be far off, because they've looked at history and the mathematics of it all. But anyway, the other thing I'm bothered by is the one statement that I've always hated is, well, if it ended today. Yeah, what a ludicrous thing to say, because in the second half of the season is really when the award is.
You're right.
Down. If Austin Matthews stopped playing today, he wouldn't win the MVP.
The only time that's ever happened, Kevin, was late February 2020, where we could say it if it ended today.
Well, I mean, but you do
ended today.
Say, like, well, and well, if we awarded how many games he's played, 56. Well, yeah, he's the MVP for 56 games. I'll give you that, maybe. I'm not even sure I'd do that. I think Shesterkin's been unbelievable, and I don't want to diminish anything. I mean, Matthews has been unbelievable. I mean, just really, really, really good. And I saw where Bunting said he was the best player in the league. I wouldn't even argue with that, the way he's playing this year. I'm just saying, first of all, we still got a long way to go. And Shesterkin should be in the mix. Like, the definition of the award is most valuable to this team. And I don't know, as important as Matthews is.
Yeah.
I don't think that Shesterkin is any less important, and maybe more.
I don't think we've had a year when we could say we have more qualified MVPs than we've had this year. Like, this is a crazy year. I mean, really,
that's a jam-packed field.
We're talking about, obviously Matthews could get 60 goals, 65. Shesterkin is amazing. Like, and obviously, I think Shesterkin is the most valuable. Like, he is the reason the Rangers are where they are. That's clear. But they also, the Rangers are a good team beyond that. But they
are. But most would agree. Like, without that, you're given there. There's probably 10 less wins.
I mean, what Huberdeau is doing in Florida is also astonishing. Just flat out phenomenal. Yeah. I mean, and that's a team that's like one of the best teams in the league. So you can sit there and say, okay, usually the best player on the best team. Maybe Huberdeau's the best player on the best team right now, perhaps. Although then you also have to go to Nazem Kadri, who is just killing it in Colorado, and people are talking about Makar in Colorado.
I was going to say he's not even the most valuable player on his team.
It might not be, but they've got two top guys there.
Have two guys for sure.
Johnny Gaudreau in Calgary is just ridiculous. I mean, this is a year where I can't remember a year where you have like 10 guys. It feels like
you could do 10. You could do a field of 10.
10
yeah.
Well, they expanded it for the Academy Awards for Best Picture. So why don't you do it for the MVP? I
still think we should have an MVP.
But that statement is also ludicrous. The best player and the best team. Well, then we shouldn't even vote.
Right. No, I agree.
Let's find out who the best team is, and whoever the best player is on that, then they win. That's the way
one of those reviews. There should be a best player award and an MVP award. That they're different things.
I got the unique perspective last night of watching the game from the stands and talking to fans during and after the game, especially after Matthews scores a hat trick and is now on pace to break the Leaf record for most goals, because I think Rick Vaive had it at 55. I think, but the way that the game played out, which has been the way that the game, I talked to Russ about this after the game, the way the game played out was, again, against a vastly inferior opponent. They're up 3-1, like they were up 3-0 against, goodness, who was it? Well, they're up 3-1 against Washington, who's not inferior, but in other teams they've been up significant amounts. And Detroit 7-2 surrender the lead, fall behind because of their own defensive inconsistencies and I think average goaltending, and then storm back in the last 9 minutes of regulation to win the game. Yes, Matthews is having an MVP season and he's a fantastic player, and there's nothing to take away from that. But when talking with fans after the game, they're like, we don't really care whether he wins the MVP. We care about this team having success in the postseason. Sure. And what they're doing right now is not conducive to success in the postseason.
Yeah.
That's not.
No, they're
Well,
giving
like you
that's
said,
what
right
you mean.
now, like they're going to make a move at the deadline.
Right.
Maybe they'll make 2 moves at the deadline. You're right. You're saying right now, but this is what I told you last night. Right now isn't the end of the season. They still have a chance to right the ship and do better things.
But
so I can't. I would don't fall in the trap of they've been doing this all year, because sometimes teams get hot those last 10 games and it's completely different.
Russ, if they're playing the way that they did in the first 2 months of the season, I would say that they're a legitimate Stanley Cup contender and a team that would be a tough matchup. The way that they've played since December the 1st, as I've talked about ad nauseum here, with shoddy defensive play, with average goaltending, with depending on the talents of that team to outscore their opponent, we all know, we've watched enough playoff games. You can't play that way in the playoffs. You cannot depend on offense overwhelming defense. A team has to be two-way to win. Tampa Bay learned that. Pittsburgh learned that. That's the way it is. And
What if they were at top of the league and the playoffs were starting tomorrow? What would be your take then?
If they were atop the league?
Yeah.
The same take.
Something to worry about, right?
Because Russ, I would continue to say you can't win the playoffs playing that way.
But here's the thing about that, and I agree with that, and we talk about this all the time. But this is not just about Toronto, but this is about any team, right? Like, you have to be the best at what you can be the best at. And this, what Toronto is they are a really great scoring team, and that's what they are. And whether or not that's going to win in the playoffs, it usually doesn't. Occasionally it does. Like occasionally you'll see, you'll see a goalie who gets hot enough that can stop enough play. And of course you will see like the crazy Marc-Andre Fleury rumors flying around today with the Maple Leafs. But that's just not going to happen. But the reality is, like, they are what they are to a degree, and they could go make a couple trades and stuff like that. And if I have a couple guys on the rumor chart for both Giordano and Manson, and those guys I think are both good fits for them, because you can't get a defensive defenseman that's going to slow this team down or make this team, suddenly not be able to transition. Like this team lives off the transition game. So that's why, in my opinion, Giordano is probably the best fit for them. But, I know he plays the off wing and all that, but I think he's skilled enough to do that. So
speaking of transition,
yeah.
Mike is the Adam Fox of the podcast. We're talking about MVP. We're going on. There's still a lot to be said. Next thing I know, we're talking about the Maple Leafs Stanley Cup chances. So, there is certainly a segue there because we're talking about Austin Matthews. But, it was amazing how we went from there quickly.
But it's not last night that were really astonishing. First of all, Kevin, the game you went to last night, I'm assuming.
Well, I do want to talk about that, but I just wanted to make, since Mike brought it up, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Maple Leafs and their Stanley Cup hopes. That I was just reading, and it was just so matter of fact that Muzzin now is expected back, so they're not going to have that extra money. Is that the bottom line? Like, that changes everything.
Yeah, he skated yesterday, and the talk is that he could be back within a month. Now that the thing is, a month is April the 9th. So, yes. So are you going to hold him out the last 3 weeks of the season? This is the thing. I think they're trying to find out before March 21st if it's at all possible that he's going to be back at 100% with time left in the season. But do you really want to risk it when you have him have a third concussion and then his career be in jeopardy? If it was me, now this is clearly not the tack that the Leaf organization is taking. If Muzzin can come back and they think he's 100%, then they're going to bring him back well before the playoffs begin, and that means they can make one move, and probably it means them having to trade a player off their roster to clear the space to bring in that defenseman. But all that changes if they keep Muzzin out the rest of the regular season. Then they can make a move for a forward and a defenseman. Let's just say Eck and I are rooting for. And Russ and you are both, in terms of excitement, we're rooting for Jake Muzzin to be playing his first game on May the 1st.
This is why this is such a joke. Because March 21st, are they going to know?
Probably not.
They're not going to know.
But they'll make a determination.
They're going to make a move, and we're going to know what they're going to do. So this to me is a joke. Like this is why I don't understand.
But that's all part of it. You have to have deadlines.
You have to have deadlines, but no, this is the LTIR is one of the things to do. Like the whole concept of this thing.
Listen, I'm with you, but again, to me, it seems like he's going to go on LTIR. I think they're just trying him out here.
They are, yeah.
And he's already there, but it
strategically makes sense for them to keep him there. He's got a concussion. I'm sure you can justify what you're saying, Mike. I mean, I had to quit playing hockey because of concussions. The longer you stay out from a concussion, the better. There's no two ways about that. No doctor in the world would disagree with that statement.
I'm not so sure. Now that we've started talking about this, I've been asking people. A lot of people feel that it will not be easily fixed because obviously players like it this way. And so we may not. They're going to have to give something back that's pretty significant in order to get that.
And it's not about justification, Eck. It's about they believe that they don't think Muzzin can just jump in at May the 1st and be at 100% and ready to go, and that they think that he needs a ramp up to. Now, what I can't say is why wouldn't you just play him with the Marlies for a couple games? No, that would.
Yeah, that's true. But here's my thing. Let's fix this, Kevin. I think let's try. Let's make this podcast about fixing this because I think that we should do that. Because we're another situation last night, and I do want to talk about the game you went to as well, and the game that I watched last night a little bit of, which was the Vegas Flyers game. I was there. And that game you were there, Russ, and that's another instance where Vegas came out like gangbusters. They looked like they were going to score 100 goals. They were flying. They were dominating the Flyers, completely dominating the Flyers at times. 5-on-5, they would keep the puck in their zone for 2 minutes at a time. But this, again, just like the Ottawa the night before, for some reason the lack of snipers, the inability to put the puck in the net killed them. They're sitting on Mark Stone, right? Who is obviously a different. Mark Stone is a difference maker. He scores 1 or 2 goals, makes a difference. He's a difference maker. So to me, my solution on this is this, and you guys can tell me if I'm God. This is what I say. I say the LTI, the whole salary cap concept extends into the playoffs. It just does. You can say there's a 10% overage in the playoffs if you want to, make some kind of comment like that, or not 10%, but just some. If you want to give some extra wiggle room there, maybe. But I think the fact is a salary cap's a salary cap. It should be the same for the regular season and the playoffs. It should be the same. Where you can fix this is by allowing, and I've said this before, and I'm going to go back to the same well I've gone to many times, allowing at the trade deadline what I call the Ray Bork rule, which is the concept of if a player is a UFA on an expiring contract, a team can pick him up without affecting their salary cap. One player. Like just one player. So you're looking at UFAs out there. Because if you do that, then this LTIR thing doesn't matter.
So salaries don't matter. So how is that fair? Because if I pick up a guy of Mark Stone's caliber and Mike picks up,
this only expiring
picks up a Justin Braun, that's not equal. How do you make it?
No, it's not equal. But no, I mean you still have to make the trades for this. But what this does is it keeps the Stars playing in the game long into the playoffs, and it enables teams who have those UFAs more options to get better because they can have more teams to shop to because they don't have to worry about it.
It makes it a lot easier for the New Jersey Devils to trade the $9 million of PK Subban because the $9 million doesn't count. The problem is that the NHL and the owners, the league, do not want money out of what they would consider out of the system. And trading a $9 million player and that not counting is out of the system.
But you're doing that already with this LTIR thing, and you're doing it shady, and it's a shady way of doing it. This doesn't have to be shady.
Heck, I mean, that's the thing. There are rules in place that these players are legitimately hurt. Kucherov was legitimately hurt. He had surgery. They just stretched out the recovery. So there's no illegality there.
You don't want to get to the point where a team is rooting for, when Muzzin goes down, it's a good thing for the Leafs. How that to me is
not
necessarily.
They're in the playoffs. They're not going to miss the playoffs. If they fall out of the top 3, does it matter? I mean, they're going to play it. They might want to fall. They might rather play Carolina. Who knows?
It's a good thing if they get him back at the right time.
Right.
Now, if he's out for the rest of the year and out for the playoffs, he's irreplaceable. They don't have another.
The kind of injury he had is the perfect injury for him to get.
I disagree. I think it's the worst. You never know what's going to be with a concussion.
I hate concussions, and I'm not saying it like that, but I'm just saying from a strategic point of view, from a perspective of like, okay,
right, but they're not taking, according to every report, they're not taking advantage of that strategy. Now, maybe that's smoke and mirrors, and by March the 19th, all of a sudden they say, "Oh, well, Muzzin had a step back."
There's a chance it's smoke and mirrors for sure.
Right.
I mean, and if they don't take advantage, and if he's skating right now, it's pretty hard to justify that he's not going to be back by the end of the season.
Well, no, because we know with concussions, it's an uncertain landscape. He could go out and skate.
Why do we have to play these ridiculous? Does anyone? No one else on the panel thinks these games are ridiculous that we're playing.
I think it's ridiculous, but there's no. What are you going to do about it?
What are you going to do? I mean, now the rule you just proposed.
Yeah,
players would love that, but the owners aren't going to go out.
Right.
Why?
I mean, like players would sign off on that in a minute. So
why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't the owners, Kevin? Because I mean, this
because they don't want teams. Just as Russ pointed out. The teams with a lot of money, Detroit, they can go out and get the $9 million players, but Arizona can't do that. Carolina can't do that. They want this to be a true salary cap.
Right. But most of those 9 million, like this year every year we have one. Maybe like this year we have Giroux, for example. Let's say
right,
but
there are more expensive players.
Right. Yeah. But what this would allow, as for example, it would allow, say, Pittsburgh, who has no cap room, or Colorado, who has a little cap room, to load up on 3 or 4 unrestricted free agents.
Like one.
No, but they're going to buy other players that do count. That's what Mike's saying.
No, yeah, you can go out and get players. You can go out
and
do that.
But they're going to get one great player and then other players as well. So
it might not be though. I mean, listen. I mean, how many great players are on expiring contracts and definitely not returning to their team? I mean, you're not talking about.
Well, they may not be great players, but they're better than other free agents.
And if teams are moving those players, they're bad teams, like the Flyers, for example, this year.
Right.
If the Flyers could offer Drew up to anyone, they could get a lot more for him. So because suddenly now there's a much bigger bidding war. Anyone can get him. And they only have to pay the remaining of his contract. The Flyers could pick up half of his contract even, and they only pay the remaining.
Now you're eliminating his no move clause too, so he doesn't.
No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that at all.
Well, then he can't go anywhere.
Well, I guess the other question here, just playing devil's advocate, are we creating another problem or creating a system where the haves have an advantage over the have-nots, just to fix something that's really not that big a deal? I mean, you're bothered by it. Sounds more ethically than anything else.
I think it's a huge deal because we have to play this game that doesn't feel. It is ethical, but it is also to the point. And you asked, like, for example, I talked to the Florida Panthers last summer. They lose in that first round to the Lightning. Because Kucherov's back. And that's fine. Yes, he's healthy and he's a part of their team for sure. But now but in the meantime, they also went out and they got Savard on defense. And they got all these other guys that they could get because Kucherov was hurt. So now they're putting this team is that a fair playing field for the Florida Panthers last year?
That's the rule.
That's
the rule.
That's why I say the rule.
And it's not. And it's not easily fixed. Yeah. I mean, you're tossing around these things like it's simple. I think everyone.
I think what I'm saying is a tough fix.
You got to get both sides to agree. That's the tough.
But what I'm saying, Kevin, is I could argue to both sides that it benefits everybody. It benefits the players, obviously, because yes, there's more. You're right. I get that. It benefits the teams trading the player, and it benefits the teams picking up the player.
Yeah. Well, let me segue into something that Elliot Friedman theorized in his column today. And they talked about it on the radio. And if you think about it, it makes a little bit of sense. PK Subban, as I mentioned, he's a $9 million cap hit. He's immovable, even at 50%. And probably even if you traded him through a third team to get it down to like $2 million. He's a declining asset. He's still an NHL player. He still could be a viable depth guy, but I don't think he's a top 4 defenseman anymore.
Definitely not.
He's on the last year of his contract. The money being paid is significantly less than the cap hit. And a la what happened with Zach Bogosian a couple years ago, where Buffalo terminated his deal, and then he signed with Tampa Bay. There's nothing, if it was a mutual termination, it would allow Subban, because they probably can't get anything for him in a trade because of the cap situation. If there was a mutual contract termination before March the 21st, he could sign with anybody and go.
He's not going to do that.
Why wouldn't he, Russ?
Yeah, but there's not much going to be much left on his contract then.
Yeah,
he's
not making that much money.
He's still in a big media market.
It actually makes a ton of sense.
He wants to be in a big media market.
right.
If he all of a sudden does that, he doesn't know who's going to have interest in him, and I think
I'm sure his agent could find out.
Russ, we're only talking a couple months here. Like he's going to go somewhere else.
I mean,
yeah, that makes sense to me, to be honest with you, because what's his hit? It's $9 million.
Yeah,
$9 million. But
so how many days are left at the trade deadline? How many days?
Well, it's over. It's a month and 8 days.
So 39 days. Do the math. 39 over 180, and then do it out. I think he's only given up $1.5 million, and
not even, because his money is $2 million
for the whole year. He's getting paid
the whole
$2 million.
year.
Oh, that's right, because that's his last year of his deal.
Right.
So it's only $2 million. Okay, I thought it was more.
Yeah, it was
fucking a couple.
Yeah, but even if it was $9 million.
Yeah.
I don't know if he would $1.5 million to do that. I don't know if he would do that.
But as he's a UFA, and as there's some question about where he is in his career, if he goes to a team like I'm just using the Rangers or Colorado or Pittsburgh or Toronto or some playoff team, it gives him a chance to sell his wares and to show where he is in his career and drum up business for next summer.
But you also understand that teams, even if he's $750, there'll be some teams that don't want to bring him into the locker room because he brings a lot of exposure, and they may not want that to the chemistry of the team. So it's not like every team's going to want him.
No, I mean
that's fair, but I think we're really just talking about an opportunity. Something we've not heard about before, really.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I mean,
he's not like the kind of problem like that Evander Kane is or anything like that. People have taken trouble with players in the past.
He's just
but hockey is different than other sports where they really are bothered when one guy seeks the spotlight.
He's just a big person.
In the Montreal room,
in Montreal, it was a big deal, and I thought completely unfairly so. I thought
there were 5 people camped out at his locker, and nobody at Brendan Gallagher's. And I know that was a problem.
The other Canadian players hated it, and I thought that was ridiculous.
Well, I'll tell you something, because I've mentioned this before. Like I've said that once he's a UFA, I believe if he's willing to take a veteran minimum or close to it, he's going to end up in Toronto, because his track in terms of his post-hockey career is in media, and the center of all hockey media in Canada is Toronto. He's worked with Sportsnet before, but if
he also could have a career in Montreal as a media person too. Like he's had enormous popularity in Montreal too.
Yeah, but Ak, I'm telling you, TSN and Sportsnet are based in Toronto. He can work in Montreal, but he could work. He could work for them. But my point is that he's worked on the initiative with Wayne Simmons. He played minor league hockey with John Tavares, and there are a number of reasons why Subban in Toronto would work, as long as he is at a certain level and still can perform in his career. I don't know whether he can still perform at that level.
I don't know. I mean, PK Subban is a phenomenal person all around. I mean, he's
a great guy.
I mean, he is a dirty player on the ice for sure at times, no question about it.
There's no question he's a dirty player, because
he's a dirty player, but like what he's done for
the Garden. Hold on, when he lost a fight with Barclay Goudreau at the Garden, he got booed off of the ice because of what he did earlier in the season with
he deserved it.
So
he deserved it. He deserved it. But he's also, if all hockey players had 1/5 of the amount of like energy towards promoting the game that he has,
that's true.
We'd be in incredible shape in this sport. Like people who are intimidated by him just bothers the hell out of me.
And I do have to get back at you that quick 30-second summation of the Flyers Golden Knights game was not really correct, because for one thing, for people who didn't watch, Carter Hart made 47 saves. A couple of times, I would say 5 or 6 times, he was flailing for his life out there, but he was great. Post game, like Marchessault mixed him up in net, but he basically acknowledged, hey, their power play, that was the best their power play has moved the puck in a while, and they did. Like, they had a lot of killer chances. Their high-depth danger chances were there. I don't think a sniper would have helped him last night. I think, and look, Leonard played really well. Leonard played a terrific game too. This was a situation where, hey, you know what? Carter Hart really did steal that game. And even Jack Eichel, remember when I was saying he wasn't shooting a lot? He finally started shooting. And on one power play, he was like shooting 4 times. So
I mean, I don't mean to take anything away from Hart's game last night. I do want to say that Leonard played a great game, but I will say that the goal he gives up to Braun was hard. Was a heartbreaking. That's what we talk about is when you give up goals. That's a goal that Edmonton, but Vegas had everything going for them, and then
it's not the worry because Edmonton's not going to make the playoffs.
I'm not saying they are.
No, but I'm just saying I wouldn't worry about Vegas. That was really a good effort on the road. DeBoer handled it correctly. They're on the road. They know they're on the road. They're going to look at their video. I think they have enough players after seeing them last night. And again, I get it. The Flyers aren't the greatest team, but you are still playing against on the road, and a goalie was playing at the top of his game, and they were in that game to the very end. They had a 6-on-4 at the very end. So sometimes it just doesn't go in. I
appreciate a fan we have of the podcast who sent me a long email about this whole Vegas thing, and I just wanted his name's Tom, I think. Yeah, I'll look it up in a second, but I mean where he's from. But he sent me a really incredible breakdown of how easy the Vegas Golden Knights schedule is from this point on. Like the Vegas Golden Knights have the easiest schedule that I've ever seen for the rest of the season. And so like when you sit there and talk about when I'm sitting there saying I don't think they're gonna make the playoffs, that is something you have to take into account. Like that is absolutely 100%.
I haven't even looked at it, so
their schedule is crazy easy. Okay. I'm sure that somewhere people who track, who has the easiest schedule from here on out, but I can't imagine
they definitely do that.
I can't imagine a team having an easier one. And I know, I'm sure it's, and I looked quickly at, because of that, I looked at Edmonton and Vancouver's schedule, the 2 teams I think that have a shot, and way harder than so Vegas is going for them. Kevin, the game you went to last night, I mean, I love the fact that last night we saw some crazy things happen around the league, and this was one of them. I mean, that was a nutso game.
Yeah, it really was. And, if you look at the Red Wings right now, they've gone 2-6 in their last 8. They've given up a 5.65 goals per game in those 8 games. And they're defensively, they've struggled all season, but that's a lot of goals to give up.
Yeah.
And they were really non-responsive in that game, is what I would use.
Yeah.
They really, and even afterward, Dylan Larkin, the captain, said that the goals started going in. We stopped communicating. And at the end of the game, he and Lucas Raymond were -5 each.
Yes.
Now, you don't normally put too much stock into plus minus, but when you have 2 players who are your stars with the highest minus of the night, it kind of speaks to what was going on that night. And I would say if it was a team that was fighting for the playoff, we would be talking about whether Jeff Blashill was going to get the Ziggy. Was there going to be a knock on his door? And because obviously the team is not responding right now.
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. I think Jeff Blashill knows, Steve Yzerman knows the team isn't quite ready.
Yeah,
and I think his thought was he would review Jeff Blashill's performance after the season. And one thing Steve Yzerman doesn't do and won't ever do is he doesn't manage his team by fan balloting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people with torches and pitchforks out there that are, marching mentally toward getting rid of Jeff Blashill. But
I thought the most interesting line was Gustav Lindstrom, who's I believe a bottom pairing guy for the Red Wings, who was -6. And Jake Gardner was sending him a congratulatory tweet on Twitter for that one. But Kevin,
there was something worse in that game though, and I want to get Kevin's opinion. Phil Kessel playing 30 seconds so he can keep the streak going. I get his wife's in labor, but you know what? 30 seconds, really, and we're going to count this now as a record. Like, did Cal Ripken do that? Did he leave at any point?
No, but Lou Gehrig did. Lou Gehrig took an at-bat in the first inning and then sat the game.
Right.
Okay, but he didn't leave the game.
He did.
At the game. No, but he was at the game. I get it. That's not great. But Kessel wasn't even in the building.
Yeah, records are great and tradition is tradition, but I think a wife in labor is legitimate.
Okay, but like, what if he does it again next game because now his wife's recovering? Then what are you going to say?
It should be like a valid excuse,
Yeah, I mean,
it shouldn't affect these things.
Next game too, we can be like, look, I want to be with my kid. My wife's still recovering. I'm gonna go out there for 30 seconds, put on my skates, leave, and fly back to her. Keep the record going.
Well, we'll talk about that when the time comes.
I have a lot
I'm sure Keith Mandel will send him a box of cigars if he does that.
Yeah.
Panthers Penguins last night was a heck of a game. That was really the game of the night.
The Panthers are overrated.
Yeah, this was the Panthers needed to have it. The Panthers have played very well against very bad teams and not so good against good teams over the last month. Really, I've been watching them closely, and they needed a game against a good team like the Penguins. Like that, they needed this. They needed to show that they could compete against tough teams. They've been doing this. They've been killing bad teams, but they've been really struggling. So, and this was a game where the Panthers of old just wouldn't have won this game. They found a way to win this game, and this shows there was a lot there, and it also it just shows how far they've come because it was really a good game. And we saw a couple great games last week. I mean, the Colorado-Calgary game last weekend was just ridiculous. I mean, there's some games that we're seeing some games that are just like you want to see a playoff series. I want to see a Panthers-Penguins playoff series. I want to see a Colorado-Calgary playoff series.
I want to tell you something about Colorado, especially the last couple of games. They can't lock down a lead, and that is disturbing.
They look bored out of their minds when they play bad teams. Have you noticed this? This is the thing.
Maybe that's what it is.
It really is. I mean, they've locked down a lead. They've locked up the conference division, whatever you want to say, so much. They haven't really, I know, but when you're up 5-1 and you make it 5-4 against the Islanders, and you're up 3-1 and then you lose 5-3, it doesn't look great. They're a team that's desperately trying to figure out how to not peak too early, how to not be they feel like a team to me. That situation when a team's like that where they want to be able to ramp it up against. They're playing their best hockey at the playoff time. And now maybe they're just saying, okay, we'll just, this is not the time. We got another 15 games, then we'll pick it up. I don't know.
There's no way Jared Bednar is saying that.
But,
but they're playing like that. It's just
this is a self-imposed doldrum. Is that what they're
not
doing?
Self-imposed, but it's almost like a psychologically necessary one, if that makes any sense. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that they were so good for so long. But when they play a good team, they're there, they show up again. But when they play a bad team, Seattle.
You're saying the Islanders are a bad team. All right, that's the first time you've said that.
Well, that was a close
game.
No,
you just said it. Hold on.
I did not say that. I said when they play a bad team. Yes, you did.
You just said when they play a bad team, and those were the two bad teams they just played.
No, they played Arizona. They lost 2-1 to Arizona, and they lost to the Devils 5-3. Those are their last two games.
You're a liar.
So it's I'm telling you, those are two there are two bad teams, right? I mean,
you're a lying liar.
Did you just call Eklund a liar?
That's ridiculous. That's not cool.
Better him than me.
Oh man. So we never got, because Mike changed the subject, but we never got to fix this. Because and
unfixable. Move on.
It's not unfixable. This is what panels like this were made to be. We're made to sit down and talk about how this could be fixed.
I'm saying it's unfixable. Let's move on.
Well, you can't just do that. That's not we can talk about these games, but people would rather us talk about interesting things. So I'm with that.
That's true.
So let's talk about and now and I still, Kevin, you still have not convinced me that I'm wrong. That and that there's anybody.
I see the merits of your case, and I don't like the ignore the salary cap. Either you're going to have a salary cap and everybody's going to lose it, but I do agree with you that we should have a salary cap in the postseason. I'm just saying that it's not as easily accomplished because you've covered labor negotiations as long as I have, and you know what happens when someone has something that the other side wants to get done, they hold them up for it, and it will be something significant to get that.
But who is unwilling to do that?
I don't think it's will be unwilling to do that.
The players would love it, like you said. It benefits the players.
The players and the small market teams, because this is something that big market teams that are up against the cap will be more willing to do. Because it's money outside of the system. If Toronto could spend $120 million, they would.
We're talking, guys. You're losing perspective here. This is
Rangers
not
do.
$120 million. I'm talking about one player for the last month and a half of the season. Not everyone's going to be $9 million. It could be $3 million. It could be $4 million. It could be the other team could pick up half the salary still to make the negotiation even better for them. The small market teams who are trying to catch up to the big market teams would love to be able to trade. Would love to.
Well,
Montreal's not a small market team.
How about this? Here's a simple premise: hold the GMs to actually doing a better job of signing contracts and doing a better job with the salary cap.
Now that's impossible.
I know.
well,
Go ahead, Kevin.
Under your system,
Yes.
if I'm understanding this correctly,
Yes.
this money would be outside the hockey-related revenue. So essentially, the players will pay for it themselves,
Right.
because through the escrow.
No, the players wouldn't pay for it themselves. This simply.
So we're going to raise the salary cap then.
You're not raising the salary cap. You're simply
Well,
shifting
where's the money coming
salary. If the salary is coming, the same amount of money is being paid to these players.
Wait,
The
here's
$8
money.
that Giroux's getting,
Here's a
still
pile of
getting.
money. Now everybody can spend it.
No, Giroux's still getting $8 million. Like let's just use Giroux as an example for the hell of it. He gets $8 million. He's looking. The Flyers are trying to trade him all different places, and they say put it out there.
Oh, I got what you're saying. Okay,
we're
you're
taking
just
$4
taking
million.
money off that, right?
We're taking $4 million of the dollars back. You only have to pay him $4 million, but the best offer, 31 teams involved, or 30 teams involved. Everybody can throw it out there.
I don't think involved.
If you're if you're this, let's take a small market team. You're Arizona. You've got not Chicken doesn't count. You've got Kessel. Kessel's a good example. Kessel in Arizona. He's unmovable, right? He's kind of unmovable because of the salary is so high. But yet the NHL, there might be a team out there that would take him for half the price. But they don't. But that team that would do that doesn't have any cap space at all. So we sit there and say, okay, you can now take him for half the price. So now Arizona's owner's happy because he gets something for him.
But
the team that trades for him is happy, and the players are happy because they get to play.
This can be almost as it's more difficult, but it's almost as it can be accomplished by washing a contract through a third team or retaining salary.
No, because that is too complicated, and I think
it's not.
Sometimes the solution to the situation is the easiest thing. Like sometimes with engineering, they say sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution.
But Eck, we've pointed out the problem here. Okay,
you have not pointed it out.
Wait. As reasonable as your suggestion is in terms of one player per team, it's still money outside of the system. The owners will never agree. The owners will never agree to it. The players will never agree to it. Never.
Yeah, you're talking about another $100,000 or $200,000 that one
doesn't matter.
There's not money outside the system. That player's not getting paid more. The players aren't making the cap.
Okay, even forgetting about that, you're still ignoring players with no trade and no move. As an example,
no,
you are, because
I'm not saying that. No, if you don't want to get traded, that doesn't change anything. How does that plays not?
Because you're acting as if like the Flyers would have more options if other teams had more money, but it's still up to Claude Giroux. It's not up to the other teams.
Yeah, but they still would have more options.
With top players,
many
times.
Claude Giroux. Granted, 100%, it still is up to the player. That's no question out of it.
But in a lot of these cases, it is up to the player.
Right, and that's fine, and that's and the bigger contracts, you're absolutely right, Russ. It will still be up to the player because most $8 million contracts are no movement clauses, right? I get that, 100%. So the player still has to decide, but now the player can decide on any team instead of just the one team that can afford him. So now the players are happy about it. Like I can go to anybody now, and not just the one team that can actually fit me into that cap space.
Okay.
So
you still haven't connected how the money gets to these things because it has to come from somewhere. It can't be invisible money that just appears, though.
No, it's paid for by the team who gets him is going to now have to pay more to that one player.
Yeah, but that
1 month.
That violates the whole idea of a salary cap. Everybody should have equal spending power now.
Which was my point. If you leave the door open a crack to something outside of the system, then somebody eventually is going to drive a Mack truck through it. They will not allow it to happen.
If you just make it cut and dry, it's this simple. One player within the last, call it a week before the trade deadline, this period opens up where you can do this. You can't.
So does it only apply to rental players?
It only applies to rental players. That's it. Contract has to be expiring. Has to be a unrestricted free agent even.
The only way I see this working is if every team every year now kicks in an extra $1 million into this fund to do this, and everybody can pull out of the fund. Otherwise, I don't see how you do it.
No, because the teams that aren't up against the cap can get the player anyway, so it doesn't matter. The teams that are up against the cap
So
are
why
the
would
teams
a
that can
team
afford to do it.
that's not up against the cap be happy that a team that's right at the cap level is going to be able to spend an extra $4 million? Why would they okay that?
You are the one group within the Venn diagram of all this that doesn't like it is the group you're talking about, which is a
Well, that's
small
what's
market
killing
team.
Major League Baseball is the same thing. It's this.
No, but this is you're talking about the small market teams that are competitive, that don't have a player to trade, don't like it. The small market teams that can't afford to, but the number of those teams is 3 or 4 every year.
I think it's higher than that, but okay.
We can go through it this year, and I can tell you.
Because most of the teams do go to the cap ceiling now.
Most teams go to the cap ceiling, and teams that and the small market teams would love to get more back in return. And the NHL gets to keep these players who are probably some of the better players and stars. They get to keep them playing in the playoffs, and we don't have to do this whole stupid LTIR thing anymore. That's not
stupid. It's not stupid.
I mean, so it's legit,
complicated, but it's not stupid.
Not
I mean, okay. Another thing that Friedman reported today, that Shea Weber's contract, which I think has 4 years left, might be moved. Now, it may not be moved at the deadline. It may be moved in the summer where it would have the most effect because a team, and he connected it to Minnesota. A team like Minnesota with $12 million next year in dead cap space, they can alleviate that by trading for Weber and using his $7.8 million as a coupon against those two.
Obviously, right?
That makes complete sense.
I would be shocked if they didn't do that.
Yeah, and I'm like, they're
not because the other thing is this, like that's an injured player, right? So they're not even paying that money.
Right. Well, but the money compared to the cap hit is significantly lower. I think it's like $2 million, but that's not complicated. It really isn't. So
they will have to pay that money.
No, they'll have to pay that, but there's the insurance aspect of a player being hurt too, isn't there? There's a certain amount that.
Well, there are some insurance deals, but it's never as easy as you want it to be.
Yeah.
You insure some contracts. I'm sure that one's insured, but.
I'm sure that contract's insured, and now are the Canadians paying? I think it's probably being paid by insurance. I don't know.
Probably 80% of it is used.
It's never 100.
All right, so 80%. So that's a lot. Shea Weber's cap hit is high, as price is coming down. You're talking about very little money for them.
The last 4 years of Weber's contract. Next year is $3 million, but the cap hit is 7.8 for the remaining 4 years, and then it's $1 million, $1 million, and $1 million the last 3 years. That's perfect for Minnesota.
Perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if they don't do that, but the Canadians have like a serious chip there. I mean, they can definitely hold Minnesota.
The talk is Jack McBain. The talk is the young college player from Boston College, right, Russ? That he's
good
a Minnesota
center. He's never going to be a top scorer, but he plays defense. He hits. He's
that's
a pretty
great.
good player.
I mean, that kind of thing is also a little bit unfair in the same kind of way I'm saying to certain teams who can't maybe do that if the contract's not insured, but other teams who have the money that can pay over because of the LTIR. An uninsured, but I'm pretty sure most.
The only time insurance and non-insurance was really a factor in one of these LTIR deals was the Nathan Horton for David Clarkson deal, because Nathan Horton's contract wasn't insured because he had a back injury,
concussions or whatever.
Yeah, every other contract is insured. I mean,
is insured, right?
So injury is insured, so that's not.
You're only paying 80%. You're only paying 20% of it.
Right.
Which is is well worth the cap space you're getting. You're still paying.
It's expensive. The insurance is expensive.
Insurance is expensive, right? But that's been paid for already, so that's already been. You're not picking up those insurance rates. I don't think. I'm not sure how that works. I really wish I knew better.
I don't either. I don't.
But I can't. But it just I still don't see how. My solution versus what we currently have.
Your solution is possible. It needs a little more work, but it is possible.
Yeah, and you just got to get people to go along with it. That's all.
Yeah.
Right. With this
anything, right?
Yeah. No, but I mean, you've been involved in CBA negotiations.
Yes,
you know how this works, and you make it sound like it's just going to be you're going to say it to both, and they're going to go along with it. But that is never how it works.
Well, I will say this, you're right. It never is how it works. But the one thing that I will say is, in this case, I think there's more teams that would rather have it, or more owners that would rather have this than owners that wouldn't. I think the few owners that wouldn't have it, like Arizona, might not love it, or I don't know, maybe Florida might not love it. But I think the big owners would be, players would be, So I don't think this is a hard sell.
Well, but there's the same divide that's going on in Major League Baseball right now would be the same here. You'd have the bigger owners versus the smaller owners, and in this league, it's like the U.S. Senate. Every state gets the same representation. You have 32 owners that are equal partners, and if there's enough of a faction that says this is not right, that won't fly.
Yeah, no, you're right. But there's more than half. But I think that there's easily.
I don't think it works that way either. I don't think they require, when you're doing CBA, you don't vote. You vote on the contract, but you don't vote on how you're going to negotiate.
I mean, you probably have to give, I don't know, you'd have to give maybe less. You have to give something perhaps, but I just think that even the lesser market teams would rather get more for their players and not pay them. Like, they're benefiting. I mean, they're not having, they don't have to pay Phil Kessel the rest of the way.
I still think it goes against the spirit of the CBA, where some teams are going to get a bigger advantage than others. And just as you have your ethics and how you want this to work, I think there'll be others who will say this as, because already, you hear the discussion too. People don't like it that the Maple Leafs and Rangers and Red Wings and stuff can spend more on executives, and the people are still mad that the Toronto escalated the coach's salaries by giving Mike Babcock the contract that they did.
For sure.
And by the way, the biggest fan of a potential Shea Weber deal anywhere will be David Poyle, because that'll virtually guarantee that there will not be a cap or capture penalty for Nashville. Because if Minnesota is trading for that deal, they want that deal to stay around for the remaining 4 years so they can get the discount.
Right.
Yeah, but that wasn't going to happen anyway.
No, it probably wasn't. But I'm just saying there was still a concern that, Weber, if Weber retired, I think the cap or capture would have been something like $20 million. I think they changed the rule, but the way it was, if he had retired a year early, there would have been a one-time charge of like $20 million on the cap for Nashville if he had retired in 2025 instead of 2026. So
yeah, right.
We got any rumors then off the show, Ak?
Sorry, I did have some. And let me look at my thing real quick. I did have some here actually. Okay, Hampus Lindholm. Talking, obviously Ducks still trying to sign him. We've talked about the teams that would like to get him. On my talking to a scout this morning, he believes the Rangers and Florida are both high on that list as far as trying to get Lindholm. But I also heard that we mentioned the Red Wings at one point, Kevin, and I also heard the Flyers, and I think this is a case where you can definitely see teams that will, at some point, perhaps that aren't involved in this, like even Seattle or somebody like that.
How would the Flyers get him?
Why would they get him?
How would they get him? How could they sign him? They don't have the money next year.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's if they don't sign Ristolainen, and then
they have to be.
They don't sign Ristolainen. They've got a boatload of RFAs. You're assuming now that they could just get rid of Van Riemsdyk, who's still there. They don't have a lot. No,
they don't. I don't know how they would do it. I don't know. Again, I perfectly admit that. I heard that it was on the radar. So.
And this is the key. This is the key with the Ducks. If Friedman mentioned that they want Lindholm back, but they don't want to give out long term.
Right.
And I don't know if I understand it, because Lindholm, I believe, is 27 going on 28.
Yeah.
I can see you want to give out, say, 6, so he's 33 when the contract is over with. But he probably wants 8. He probably wants
he's a young UFA defenseman.
Yeah, I know, and
I think he's 28. I think
28. Yeah.
So age 36. Now, if they're talking 4-year deal, he's not signing there. Then that's why even bother negotiating with him if all you're willing to offer him.
Right. And other teams would be able to outbid the Flyers. They can't go any higher than 6.
Yeah, I mean it's very possible. I'm just saying, and I also Seattle could be involved in that. And I think that what's going to be interesting is there are going to be these teams that are like I've heard Seattle could be a buyer too, in different situations. Mm-hmm. So and they better be. I think.
Yeah, but the players aren't going to go. They aren't going to go there.
Right.
They're not going to go to Seattle.
Not necessarily the UFA. No, I'm not talking about UFAs in that case.
Well, okay, but players like say Konechny, who we've heard rumors about Philadelphia maybe wanting to trade. That's a player that a Seattle might be interested in because he's locked up, because he's on or Chikrin, or guys who have 3-4 years. Because right now it's like, I mean, I understand. Like they just signed Jared McCann for $5 million for 5 years.
Great deal.
But don't you think Seattle has too many players locked up? Like look at their
right. That was exactly the point. I mean, okay, how many Travis Konechny? They have Eberle. They have Jaden Schwartz. They need centers. They need top pairing.
They need a lot of things.
Right. So it makes no sense for them to be the depository for another team's mistake or another team's bad contract. They need to add the players that will eventually make them into a contending team. And, I mean, ideally, Russ, having Matty Beniers develop and be a really good
he'll sign and go to him for sure.
Right. But the whole point is, it's like, how they can't keep being the repository for other teams' mistakes. And right now, everybody's seeing that's what their role is. I don't think that's going to be that. I don't think that is what Ron Francis think their role should be.
I think they made their own mistakes, though. I mean, some of those contracts they've done. Yeah. And like to me, an expansion team, unless you were the Vegas Golden Knights, which is going to turn out to be, an aberration because, Seattle wasn't able to duplicate that because the environment was different. But
I'll point to 2 deals. I'll point to 2 deals specifically, Kev. One is Grubauer. How you could invest 5 years at $5.5 million on an expansion team when more than likely in those 5 years you may not make the playoffs. I know that Vegas did, but he was a questionable one anyway, and now they've given him 5 years. And the other one was Alexiak. He's a top 4 defenseman for an expansion team. Who cares?
No, that was a terrible signing. We knew that was a terrible signing.
You have to me, if you're going to be an expansion team, you should be set up so that in this trade deadline, you should be moving 3 or 4 guys who are going to become unrestricted free agents. Right. And they have, just Giordano and maybe Yarncroc.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know.
That's crazy. Now, Eck, let me ask you. I could see from the outside that Florida is stepping up its game, scouting the Flyers. And I now think, and Mike and I talked about this, I think, on one of the days you were off, we're both kind of in agreement that we could see them going for Giroux and Braun in a really big trade. That's my feeling. I think they've gotten very serious about this, Florida.
Perhaps, yeah. I think they're definitely. I think that there's a better chance on Braun than Giroux, but I think that Giroux they would like Giroux, but I think Braun is a really good possibility of going to Florida. I do think that that's the case, but I think and both could happen, but they don't have a whole lot of cap space either. So
now, Russ, if it's
but the Flyers could eat 50%.
They could eat it, but they're still they're right up against it.
Russ, if it's Owen Tippett for Braun,
I wouldn't do that deal. I would still rather get Logan Huchko or somebody like that, because even though Owen Tippett is more of the home run swing, you are now putting him in another situation where you're going to say, all right, we've got to get this guy scoring goals. This is why we got him. I know on the broadcast they were talking about him being a playmaker, and he is upped his playmaking a little bit to stay in the league. That's what he's done. But he's essentially a goal scorer. So if you're getting him to be a goal scorer. And so how much emphasis are you going to put on that to do that?
I look at it as him being a top 10 pick in the first round is in the past. He's what he is now. He's 23 years old. If you're getting him for a 35-year-old defensive rental, I consider that a win.
I don't know if that's a win. I think it's still a risk you're getting, because remember, he has to get signed to a deal. He's costing you money. He's going to cost you more than Braun. You don't have a lot of money.
No way.
He's not going to make more than Justin Braun made this year, next year.
No,
I think he will.
Braun's making 1.8. There's no way.
Making 1.8. No, okay. I thought he was making a little less.
Yeah, he's probably a 1.2 to 1.5 on a 1 or 2 year deal.
But he's not a 750 guy. He's a 1.5 guy. And now you're going to hope. How many points are you hoping to get out of him, Mike?
30.
Yeah. So it's not the best trade. It's not the worst trade. I'll tell you.
Yeah. The final thing I'll throw out there. You had anything else in Seattle there? Kevin was talking about Seattle there. You had anything else on that?
What's that, Ek?
Kevin was talking about Seattle there. I wonder if you had anything else on that as you were going through that.
No. I'm just the point. I think they should be a bigger factor than they are, and I think that's to the detriment of that franchise.
And the only thing that they can do to maximize their take back before the deadline, Kev, is to be the middleman in trades, and they can do that. If they're the third team and they're retaining salary and it's only for the last month or so of the season, they can get assets and get draft picks and prospects and players that can play for them next year from teams, and I think that's realistic.
We do need to mention too that the Flyers triumvirate all visited Hershey to scout them, and I still don't think it's a high chance that Claude Giroux goes to Washington, but I do think Washington would be interested in Martin Jones, and Washington has a lot of players that are never going to play for Washington that are pretty good players, and I could see them swapping a player for Martin Jones.
Russ, they're there for the chocolate. Come on.
I got to go, guys. We'll see everybody later.
Thank you, Kevin. The last thing I'll say is Kravtsov. I heard his name mentioned.
Even before Kravtsov, any thought about the Flyers and the Caps?
No, I don't think that's happening. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. They Capitals might be looking at Braun too. It's possible that they're. I mean,
it is possible.
I mean, and it's also the thing right now where I think that that's possible, but I don't think that's a Giroux deal.
Just to answer Mike, if I could get Lucas Johansson for Braun rather than Owen Tippett, I would take Lucas Johansson because he could play the power play.
I'd rather have Tippett.
I think I'd rather have Tippett too because the potential's there. I need to get a new situation perhaps, but you never know.
I think Johansson's a better player. I just do.
Finally, Kravtsov. I continually hear two teams that that aren't really being talked. That we really expect to be buyers. Ottawa and San Jose with Kravtsov as the two teams.
Well, that makes sense for both because those are two organizations that have trouble getting players.
Right.
Yeah.
And Kravtsov is retainable for I think 5 years. So that. Yeah.
And if you figure if San Jose for some reason loses Hurdle, even if he doesn't get traded to the Rangers, Kravtsov could be the thought there that hey he could fill some of that point.
Yeah, those are two teams I think that definitely feel the need to do that. Montreal has
no way he's staying with the Rangers, that's for sure.
Yeah, Montreal's also toiled with it as I
mean Gordon's going to try and get him. There's no doubt.
And that could be with that could be the Sherratt deal. It could be part of that.
Honestly, it makes too much sense with Sherratt and the Rangers. I mean,
it does.
There's just so many things.
Boston might be the favorite for Sherratt now, though.
Boston. Yeah,
we'll see. I mean, I agree that the sense is there that Kravtsov one way, Sherratt the other way. Kravtsov is definitely a Montreal Canadiens type player. I think they would.
He
love
is. There's no doubt.
But we'll see. That's all the time we have for today, folks. Thanks so much for watching the show and everything and all that stuff. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will be back again tomorrow.